Well, that's looking pretty good. Well, friends, it's my experience that most makers tend to have a lot of stuff. Now, the luckier ones also have a lot of places to put all that stuff, but most of us don't. So what we have to do is find ways to organize it. And one of the more popular ways is with little sorting bins, drawers. That's what today's project is. We're going to make a bunch of these drawers and a cabinet to hold them all. We'll start by going to Fusion 360 and create a CAD model of the actual drawer. And I'm actually going to rework an older model that I had created for another project but didn't use. I'll leave a link to this model in the doobly-doo, but one thing you'll have to do is if you use tempered hardboard that's textured on one side, you're going to have to flip one of the sides. Otherwise you'll have the texture outside on one side, inside on the other. Then we'll go to the laser cutter and cut one out. Then we'll put it together to prove the concept. Now that's a nice tight fit. We'll just hold it together with this rubber band, and then we'll come on the inside and apply glue to all the seams, and that should hold it together just fine. Now there are a few different adhesive technologies we could try to use on this project, so we should probably just test a couple of them and see which one is best. Now when I first envisioned this project, my idea was to use this kind of tempered hardboard that's smooth on both sides. But my friend who has a laser cutter had this kind that has a texture on one side, and she ran that for me as a test. So we'll compare them. Now my first test off camera was with this original Gorilla Glue, and I didn't like it. The stuff sticks to everything, it's hard to apply, it's hard to spread around. Looking inside here, it did expand, which seems to be okay. And it seems to be holding pretty well, so it's nice and strong. That's good, but it's ugly. Who wants ugly? I've traditionally considered hot glue to be a temporary situation, but who knows, this may work. The nice thing about the hot glue is the gun allows you to really get in there into the joint, and that's nice. That actually looks nice, and that's going quick. It applies nice and fast. And I'll leave that on the video in real time so you can see just how fast that went. And the other thing I want to try is Titebond. It's pretty good stuff. Hashtag not sponsored. But this applicator is not going to get in there. Luckily I have this. Now that's going even nicer than the hot glue. I kind of like that. Let's do the textured one now also. Those joints are looking pretty good. Now I could also try CA glue, but I tend to be kind of frugal, that way my maker buck goes farther. And CA glue ain't cheap. It would take several tubes at several dollars a piece to do all the drawers that I'm going to do. Incidentally, that's going to be more than 100. And the first lesson I learned about this is one thing I just now did was there was about ½ an inch of plunger left, and I squirted that into the garbage can. I could have actually just squirted that right back into the bottle and used it over again. So much for being frugal, eh? And one thing I was worried about was getting this plunger back out because they didn't give me any kind of ramrod to do it. But I found out if you just hold this tip up to the faucet and turn it on, the water slowly fills and pushes it right back out. So it's been about 5 minutes and the hot glue is completely cured and it's stuck. It's tough. That's holding fast. I could go that way. Let's give it a couple of hours and see how the Titebond holds up. I think we'll actually do some destructive testing to see which is stronger, the hot glue or the Titebond. And we'll definitely destroy the Gorilla Glue test also. Now I know the gold standard for testing this strength of these joints would be to use a strain gauge, but I don't have one, so what I'm doing is I'm going to use a turnbuckle and we'll just count the number of turns before the wood breaks or the joint, whichever comes first. This was the Gorilla Glue and it broke at 2.5 turns. Now both of the Titebond tests started breaking free at just about ½ a turn. On the bright side, if you take a look at these images here, it actually broke the wood, not the glue joint. And the hot glue joints offered no resistance whatsoever. On the bright side, I can cut the hot glue off and re-glue them with some other technology. Okay, here I've got 102 boxes. I want a couple of extras just in case. And since the Gorilla Glue did hold together the best, I think I'm going to go ahead and use it. I've got a 100 milliliter syringe here that ought to be good for applying it, and we'll just do that, see how it goes. Now, it took me a while, but I finally did develop a rhythm. It still took me 4 hours to do all the 106 boxes. Well, I got pretty good mileage out of the Gorilla Glue. It only took about 6 ounces to do all 107 of these drawers. I'm absolutely certain some of them are going to stick together, some are probably going to stick to the table. Hopefully I'll be able to break them free. And look what happens to that glue. It kind of expands and fills the gaps. So quite a lot of these had some drips. We'll just come in, chisel, scrape those off. So the laser began to overheat and it quit cutting all the way through and the edges started to get kind of ragged like this. I went through and I was able to salvage about another 50. So we'll go ahead and put those together, glue them up, and then we'll move on to the next phase, which is the cabinet that will hold all these drawers. And there's the other 54. That's a total of 160. Now to plan the carrier that will hold all of them. So I went to the store with the orange sign and the lumber there was horrible. Then I went to the other store that had the blue sign and it was only slightly better, but at least I found something I could use. Now there are a number of ways this could be laid out. Each of these drawers is 3 inches tall and I want a little bit of play in between them. So what we'll do is we'll just take another piece of tempered hardboard, put it on top of the drawer. Then we'll take a piece of this 1x6. So we'll start here with the loose tenon joint and put the drawer up against it. Then we've got our 1/8 inch spacer and then the thickness of the next joint, which is going to be a rabbet joint cut into the edge. So to cut this rabbet, there are a number of ways that could be done. I think I'm going to use the circular saw to do that. Now with our guides in place and my depth set to 1/4 of an inch, which is how much of a rabbet I want. One down, 15 to go. And I'll use the previous rabbet as the alignment for the next one. Then I moved the guides and cut new rabbets at the appropriate spacing 14 more times. Now unfortunately I had trimmed 2 inches off one end of those boards, and if I could have gotten away with just trimming 1 inch, these other end drops would be perfect for the top and bottom boards. But they're 1 inch too short, so they're scrap. Okay, I've got 10 drawers here, and they are right at 30 and 1/16. I guess the glue got in there on a couple of them and spaced it out a little bit. And I'm going to have to look forward to that happening on every row. So I think 31 inches between the sidewalls is going to be good. I'll cut my top and bottom board at 31 inches and then install those with loose tenons. And then I'll cut the remainder at 31.5 inches and slide those into the rabbets. This project is further proof that you never know what you're going to find on this channel, but if you hit that notification bell, you'll get a notice every time I post something new. Okay, so this is the loose tenon. Now one thing when you bore the holes for these, you want to make sure that you bore from the same side on every piece of wood. You see we've got this little aiming arrow, line that up with your line and cut your mortise. I did a test fit and it's looking pretty good, but because the wood is warped so badly, I think I'm going to use the Gorilla Glue on these as well, because it'll expand and fill the gaps a little bit. Okay, the circular saw left a little bit of texture behind, so I'm going to come in and dress that up with a chisel. Now I want to make sure this is square. The way you do that is measure diagonally. It should be the same in both directions. Got 71.5 here, and we got, what do you know, 71.5. And we'll just go around the entire perimeter and tack this on. Now my circular saw blade left a little bit of tear out here, so we'll just sand that off. And here I'm checking to make sure my drawers fit on all the shelves, and they do. The only thing that's left is to secure the shelves in place, and I think I'm just going to come in with a couple of brad nails down each side. So because this is only 5.5 inches deep, I think I'm going to put some feet on it. So we'll just make some out of a couple of drops of the 1x6. Pretty simple, and we use Titebond for this. Alright, well this came together just like I planned. The fit is right, all the drawers fit. I'm not going to install all the drawers right now because the one thing I didn't plan was where to put this thing. So I've got to clear out some space to figure out where it's going to live. I know it's going to replace some stuff that's already over there. I have a couple of other storage solutions over there that I'm going to get rid of in favor of this. And if you want to see the result of that endeavor, find me on Instagram. My name there is wildman.tech. So that's all for this time. I'm happy to answer any questions in doobly-doo below, so please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Click up here to see my last video. Click over here to see something of mine that YouTube thinks you'll like. And have a good one.